Water.
Earth.
Fire.
Air. This is... What were you saying? This is Yip Yip.
Hooray!
An Avatar podcast. Okay, oh my gosh, it happened. It finally happened. Zuko's with us. He's here.
Boo.
What?
Can we get an intro? Don't just jump in.
Oh, okay.
And welcome back to our podcast.
What's it called?
I don't care.
Well, you probably should. No one knows what it's called.
I always
Troy.
butcher it. No, I'm gonna butcher it.
What's it called, Troy?
Yip Yip Hooray, an Avatar podcast. I'm Katie.
Is it an Avatar podcast, or
Yeah,
is it
it's
just
an Avatar podcast. I
Okay.
don't claim to be the. I'm not the official person. This is not an official podcast.
Welcome back. I'm Troy.
Hello, I'm Jordan.
Hi. I already did mine.
Why are you 7 voices?
I don't know. Okay.
Our 7 listeners, which thank you guys so much. They're gonna think we have 7 different female co-hosts.
And then me. Okay. What did we watch today?
So today we watched Book 3, Chapters 12, The Western Air Temple, and Chapter 13, The Firebending Masters. And Zuko's hanging out with the group. Like, he's here, and he's not being an antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Troy. Let's hear it.
As the resident Zuko hater. How'd that go for you, Troy?
Well, finally, they made him not lame anymore.
What do you mean? He's
I was literally booing that kid from season 1 because it's like, I've got to capture the Avatar. I've got to capture the Avatar. It's my destiny. I'm like, yep, shut up, Zuko. What are you going to do after you capture the Avatar? He had no plans after that.
Just like how Aang said in the Firebending Masters episode, I don't care what everyone else says about you, Zuko. You're pretty smart.
Yes.
So is that it? That you were annoyed? I'm
So
not talking about the past.
I thought it was impossible, but he managed to pull it off. He has finally redeemed himself.
You think he's officially redeemed himself?
What, just by showing up?
Just by showing up.
Well, what'd you think about Katara's reaction to Zuko?
It was totally justified. I would not expect her to give him any less of a reaction.
Yeah. No, I think anything less would have been betraying her character and her experiences with Zuko. What'd you think?
It was emotional. I felt very... What?
Emotional?
I felt very emotional. The whole episode, like my heart was racing.
Were
My
you-
eyes were kind of wet.
Yeah.
Was it pride? Were you proud?
No.
Well, God, every season it's like Zuko's good. Now he's back to bad. And then the second season, he was this close listening to his Uncle Iroh, and then he turns on the Avatar again. I'm just like, this darn kid, I've had it with him. I've had it with him.
I've had it up to here with you, Zuko. Well, here's a little nugget. So apparently in the original series Bible, when Mike and Brian and the team kind of outlined what their 3 seasons would look like, the plan was for Zuko to join the group in the end of Book 2.
Well, they failed.
Well, no, so they changed their plan, but the original idea was for Zuko to join up at the Crossroads of Destiny.
Yeah, they failed.
Is this not? Is no one like surprised? Like, oh,
Wait,
it would've
you
been,
mean like when Zuko joined
when he
Azula?
had when he had the choice?
Oh.
Like,
It was the most irritating thing for me to watch, that kid just like, maybe I'm a good guy. Nope, I want to take sides with the Azula and shoot the Avatar in the back. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm so done.
with what we know now, I do appreciate that Zuko did go with the Fire Nation. I don't think it would have been as satisfying with him joining up had he done it at the end of Book 2. He needed a little more growth, and he needed that experience of going back to the Fire Nation and being like, oh, maybe this nostalgia trip that I have like isn't actually reality.
It
Right,
was
like-
the ponytail.
Right, and he finally achieved his goal in a way and got back home and got to reconnect with the family and his people. But yeah, it wasn't satisfying.
But you know what is satisfying? Racing Appa and the crew to the Western Air Temple, setting up camp with like the tarpy part of his hot air balloon, and then taking a rope down to the Western Air Temple and then waiting for them.
He was like, hey guys. Also, he had the little frog friend.
For his job interview, which he failed on himself.
Oh God, I loved the job interview. It was so out of character with what we know of Zuko to see him like kind of let loose in a way, which I think is like true Zuko in my opinion. Like that's how he really is.
Believe it or not, he did such a good job. In this episode, I actually totally forgot about Combustion Man. Like, when that guy showed up again, I was like, what's this guy do? Oh, that's right.
Hey, sorry I hired that assassin.
Yeah, sorry I had that.
You sent him after us?
Yeah, no, he's just like, you idiot, you could have totally blamed Azula on that.
Okay, the job interview, though. Can we talk about his impersonations of his uncle and Azula?
Which did you like better?
Azula surprised me more. Listen here, Avatar. It was just like, I can imagine Dante Bosco in the recording booth being like, hey, so you have to pretend like you're being Azula and Iroh, but you can't be too good at it because Zuko's not that good at really anything. So how did you like that job interview, Katie?
I always like it. I like his little Zuko talking to Zuko and practicing, and the frog's not giving him the reaction that he's looking for.
How many other times do we think Zuko's had a Zuko conversation about something Zuko should do that we just haven't seen? Do you think he's done this before? Like, he's like getting jazzed up before like the Siege of the North. He's like, okay, Zuko, you gotta go capture that little kid, and that waterbending girl's gonna be there, but you gotta take her down.
I assume that this is a common theme. Zuko's kind of alone, so he's got to pump himself up.
So during Zuko alone, you actually see him, he gets off the ostrich horse. He's like, okay, Zuko, this is what you're gonna do. But I do appreciate that we see him, his job interview thing that he does, he seems like he's gonna do a pretty good job. Like, he's making some pretty valid points when he's talking to himself. But then when he goes down to the temple and he's actually talking to them, he's fumbling over his words. He's got no game. He sounds even sketchier than what before.
Well, it's in his interview when he finally approaches the gang is totally reminds me of every job interview I've had. Like, I will talk to myself before a job interview, and then I'll go to the job interview, and the first question they ask me is like, "Why do you want to work here?" Or do you consider yourself a hard worker or whatnot?
No.
And I'm just
no.
And I'm like, how can I prove to you that I'm a hard worker? Like, I can't just tell you I'm a hard worker because I think you and I both have different descriptions of what a hard worker is. And so when he goes to the group, he goes, I know I've been a bad guy, but now I'm a good guy. It's like, how do you prove to everybody right then and there that you're a good guy? And so I can understand his fumbling over his own words. I would have sounded just as idiotic as he did.
Did you think the gang was going to react differently to Zuko when he approached them?
To be honest, I didn't really care how they were going to react.
Did you think that they were going to be like, yeah, Zuko, we need a firebender teacher?
I just kind of kept whispering to myself, like, Zuko.
You weren't whispering. We were sitting right next to you. You were doing no whispering at all. You were a liar. You don't get this job.
No. So, no, I was mouthing to myself. I'm like, don't firebend on them, Zuko.
Happening?
Don't lose your nerve. Don't lose your nerve.
Yeah, I guess that's true. You were mouthing because I was looking over and Troy was just going.
For those of you that can't see, Jordan is literally impersonating me right now.
That's very loud.
So yeah, with Zuko, I don't think there was no way they could have like accepted him in that moment because actions speak louder than words, as we know. And Zuko's shown before he can talk a good talk, but then when the pivotal moment comes, he's proved that he can't be trusted to make the right decision. So yeah, of course they're not going to trust anything he's going to say. And so Katara was totally justified in not buying it. And so was Sokka. But Katara she saw all of it. She got to see Zuko pour his heart out to her to an extent and then just be crushed when he makes the wrong decision. So of course she's going to be really apprehensive to it.
Well, right, because she almost wasted her little magic water on Zuko. And that would have been a huge bust had the same ending. Okay, moving on. But I thought it was interesting, like the flashback to when he and Iroh were at the Western Air Temple, and then they say like a week after he was banished. What did you think about that, Troy?
The guy that voices Iroh now, it's like sometimes I can't tell that Mako's gone, and other times I'm like, dude, just stop talking.
Mako. But yeah, no, it's hard, and I'm trying really hard not to compare him to Mako. It's so hard. But I tried to listen to what Iroh was saying. But I think it was interesting with the Iroh Zuko flashback because it's not intentionally supposed to be a foreshadowing or a parallel to what this episode is, but I took it that way when Zuko says, look, the only way for me to regain my honor is to find the Avatar. And now we have, finally, Zuko's trying to find the Avatar to regain his honor with actions.
Yeah, no, this episode literally posed two questions in my mind. One, well, not really a question, but more of like, I wanted to see what Iroh was like in his days of glory when he was still like a general in the Firebending Nation. Like, how dangerous, how ruthless was he really before he totally chilled out? Because he's got this incredible reputation, Dragon of the West. And every once in a while you get to see him use his talents, but you don't. I really want to know what he was like back then when he was still like leading firebending soldiers in the battle. And second of all, I want to know what the Combustion Man's real name was.
Sparky.
Boom.
Sparky McBoom. So the first point about Iroh, we learn in the Firebending Masters that Iroh, before Zuko was born, found the dragons and was taught the true meaning of firebending. And so we can assume that was like it max maybe 20 years before Iroh's on there. And so we can maybe look at that as maybe Iroh's turning point, because we don't get any sense that Iroh went out with an altruistic purpose to find the dragons. Like, it does seem like he went out to find the dragons to kill the dragons. And so at that point, maybe Iroh was a different person, and then the dragons kind of set him on a different path.
He was enlightened.
That could have been an enlightening experience, but let's put a pin in that because we can talk a lot about when Zuko and Aang were enlightened by the dragons.
Well, that's true. Okay, also going back to Combustion Man, like when he shows up, but I thought when last time we saw him, didn't Toph, mess up his little third eye?
Yeah, she like nicked him in the forehead.
So I was surprised to see that was functioning at full capacity again. And then obviously Sokka's Boomerang was MVP. Finally.
Can we talk about like just Sokka being so good at like fundamental like geometry? He can like find like the path of where it went and be like, okay, I can just throw this just this way.
As we've established, Sokka probably shouldn't be able to do all these things, but he's apparently talented and just has these skills.
I mean, I understand the Boomerang one. I don't question. I mean, he and Boomerang go way back.
So instead of a sniper rifle, he's got a boomerang.
But that moment where Sokka throws the boomerang, it's like kind of goes quiet. You see Boomerang go.
That was literally a 1 in a million chance. So
no way, Sokka.
yeah.
That was a 1 in 2 chance. Sokka had a 50% chance of hitting Combustion Man. The other one, he would have hit Zuko, and he would have plunged to his death.
Sliced through that vine that he was climbing.
Yeah, Zuko's trying to climb back up.
But we can all agree that the MVP of the Western Air Temple is Toph, as Toph is always the MVP of every episode. Because Toph, like, she has clarity when it comes to Zuko, because Aang, and especially Katara and Sokka, I mean, their opinions of Zuko so clouded from everything that happened in Book 1 before Toph even joined the group. And so everything that they are reacting about, Toph's like, that doesn't sound like too bad. Like, you guys are kind of like letting all this cloud your judgment here. And I really appreciated that Toph took that stance. What'd you guys think?
Well, she met Iroh, and she thought Iroh was a heck of a guy, so I could see her wanting to give Zuko a chance.
So yeah, I almost think, like, had Toph not been there to, like, talk everyone through it, and then to go out and kind of, address Zuko and kind of confront him in a way, I don't know if he would have ended up joining the group.
I don't know. In my mind, Aang would have come around and like he would have been like tossing and turning and kind of like, oh, maybe I should go talk to Zuko.
Right. You
kind of snuck off.
You do get the sense that Aang was buying what Zuko was selling.
But I think out of respect for Sokka and Katara that he didn't want to, just because it was like, yeah, that does make sense and I probably shouldn't trust him. But I also think Aang's all about those gut feelings. And
so Sokka.
Oh, God.
Because Sokka, I don't think necessarily was like super anti-Zuko, but he was more like, what's Zuko done for us?
Mm-hmm.
I think Katara really is the only one that had like serious beef.
Right.
And just for how privileged Zuko's been and how much he's had at his advantage, like the only thing that the kids have had at their advantage is the fact that you have Aang, the Avatar, who can bend any element. And so I think they're also holding that against Zuko. I do appreciate that they didn't just like let him into the group. And that when they finally did, like, Zuko was offering himself as a prisoner on a silver platter, like Toph said. But and I understand why everybody reacted the way they did, but at the same time, they don't have time on their side. Sojin's Comet's right around the corner, figuratively speaking. So between the time running out and they don't have any time to look for a Zhang.
Zhang.
Like, they would have accepted Zuko's offer sooner or later, but I thought it was very appropriate for Katara to establish her own sense of insurance and say, look, if you betray us one more time, I will end you permanently.
I was really surprised by that line.
I was not surprised. I was like, that's right, you give it to him.
What'd you think, Katie?
I mean, it's like an uncomfortable scene for me. And clearly it's justified. But yeah, it's like this like bad girl coming into the room. It's like, listen here.
Well, a weird thing too is that us as viewers, like, we know Zuko so much better than these guys know Zuko. And so for us as viewers, we watch it and we're like, yeah, let him in. Zuko deserves this. Like, we've seen all the things he's been through. We've seen his flashback. It's that saying, like, there's nobody you couldn't love once you know their story. And I feel like at this point, we know Zuko's story. They don't know his story. Katara's gotten snippets, and I think Aang sees some good in Zuko. And it's also interesting about, like, that moment that Zuko brings up about him saving Aang when he was the Blue Spirit. I was really interested that they brought that up, and I was like, oh, it probably was like a big moment.
Yes.
But then apparently Aang never told Katara and Sokka about that.
Yeah, it was like all the secrets. It was like, oh, well.
I got something to admit, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
like
why did he keep that a secret?
It's like the end of an election cycle. Like, you're just now bringing out these secrets to us. Just now, it's a little late in the game, eh?
You are a lizard man?
Come on, man.
Yeah.
I will pay you to stop attacking them. I will pay you double to stop attacking them.
I think in that moment, you definitely see Zuko being like this little princely twerp toward a Combustion Man.
In desperation to make things right, and he doesn't really know how. But actions speak louder than words, right? And so he was trying to stop and make it right. And it was a hot mess, but whatever.
Because Zuko doesn't think things through.
Right. Okay, going back to when he's like, oh, take me as your prisoner. I was like, what is happening? Get off the floor.
I mean, Zuko's in a pretty low place.
Oh, God. And then, where Katara just, like, throws water at him.
And it's not even that, like, harsh. She just, like, gets him wet. And he kind of, like, it's definitely very insulting to Zuko, I thought. He's, like, soaking wet. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
But poor Zuko, I mean, this is, like, really his last chance at redemption. So,
well,
I mean,
poor writers, like, how do they make him redeem himself in a integrous way? But then they're realizing there's probably no way to save his dignity, so they'll just splash him, we'll banish him, and then Toph is ultimately, as always, the one that gets the dominoes going. So shout out to MVP Toph.
why am I so bad at being good?
Do you think her feet have healed?
No.
I know. I was
kind of like, okay. I thought that in that moment, like, she's like crawling away, and I feel like he could have been like, let me help you, let me take you back there, let me carry you.
He could have said that, but in Toph's mind, like, if she's blind without her feet and she's already blind in her eyes, there's no way in heck she's trusting anybody except her gang. So
Well, that's true.
I mean,
and in those moments when, like, something crazy happens that you don't expect and you're already, like, feeling a little on edge, like, I think Zuko probably just short-circuited.
there was plenty of awkward moments in this episode, but there was also plenty of highlights that made this episode one of the best ones.
Like what?
Awkward in terms of, like, Toph and Zuko both on their knees. One's for redemption.
Both on their knees. Oh, I guess Zuko was on his knees. Okay.
Yeah. One's on his knees for redemption, and she's on her knees trying to crawl away from him, all scared like. And then, I don't know, you got the kids, all four of them pretty much on their knees trying to hide from Combustion Man. Those were all the awkward moments. I'm like, oh boy.
We're not addressing the awkward moment where Aang kind of reverts, talking about the seriousness of needing to find a firebending teacher, and Aang kind of brushes it off because he doesn't want to face that.
Right, so he's just going to go zip around the air temple.
Yeah. This had to have been quite the challenge to get off the writing table and into the booths.
I do think it was the best way that Zuko could have entered the group. I don't think there would have been a better way for these characters to kind of get him back in.
I mean, the only way they could have upped the ante is right when Combustion Man's about to blow up the group,
He blows up Zuko's arm.
or Zuko blows up his arm,
Oh, God.
or pushes him off the cliff.
So wait, why was it one of the best episodes, do you think?
It just we get to see a part of Zuko where he finally has that kind of intellect where you can see he's really good at being angry, as we've seen for the last 3 seasons. But you finally see the human side of him where he's really trying his hardest to make friends, but then he realizes he's not good at making friends.
Better than Azula.
Way better than Azula. But I think that's the cost of coming from royalty, is that you don't know how to talk to people who you think are inferior to you. And so he's just like, oh god, like these people are actually superior to me in a way. So he's like, oh come on, Zuko, think. How do you make friends?
I know where he was like, looks like thanks for letting me into your group, and they're like,
They just
wait
leave.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
like you're not really in the group.
Another awkward moment where they just kind of like walk off as he's like, thanks for letting me into your group, and they just all walk off.
I do appreciate that we kind of address like all the awful things Zuko's done. Like everyone kind of, like even like small things like the pirates kind of
Yeah.
get brought back up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are holding a grudge. So I mean, this episode also has probably Katie's singular most favorite moment in the whole series.
Any guesses on what that is, Troy?
The frog.
No. Well, I guess kind of.
But you're used to being to frogs so much.
So much.
So much.
Frog.
What's my favorite line?
Katie's favorite moment is, "Hello, Zuko here."
So much that Jordan made me a Valentine.
It's true. I did. What was it, Katie?
It was Zuko saying, "Hello, Zuko here," and
It says
something-
"Hello, Valentine" here.
Oh, fine.
Oh.
Very nice,
You're
very
right.
nice.
You're right.
So taking it back to your first experience watching this, Katie, what was your reaction with this whole episode?
Oh God, like I could even remember. This is like my first time. Remember? I think for me, I'm kind of like Katara. You know, I'm like, ooh, I don't want to trust Zuko, and I'm not really sure. Even, yeah,
It's screwing up so much.
Right. So I was like, oh, like, is he really? You know, is he doing this for real or not?
So again, I would like to remind everyone that there was an 8-month gap between the Day of Black Sun
And I've been
episodes.
dying to ask you this for the last 20 minutes. As somebody who loves this show, and you had to wait that long, did you have a tear in your eye when you watched the show again?
I almost think I was angry with how long it took.
So when Zuko said Zuko here, were you like, yay, or you're like,
Oh no,
this?
Jordan was literally firebending during
No,
this whole
I
episode.
was very happy. I was so satisfied that Zuko was finally there. But again, like I had 8 months of just like considering every single way of Zuko meeting the group, and so I'd already like played out a bunch of scenarios.
But you thought he would be good for real.
Oh yeah, especially after what he did Day of Black Sun. I was waiting for that turn since Crossroads of Destiny because I knew Zuko had it in him. And I could tell intuitively that the writers were going to put him in that direction. So waiting that long, it's hard because for me watching it, like everything Day of Black Sun and before is like all very vivid, and it's all like episodes I've seen many, many, many times. And then the back half of book 3, I haven't seen as much because of how shoehorned they were put through. And that's Nickelodeon's fault 100% because they waited 8 months between Day of Black Sun airing in the US. So Day of Black Sun aired in November in 2007.
Right. Who can remember that? Oh, yeah. I think it was a sunny Wednesday afternoon, maybe like 3:30.
I distinctly remember going to a football game in high school for the pep band where I'd play tuba and being like, guys, Day of Black Sun's recording right now at home and I'm going to go home and watch it. And it was like blew my mind. So, and then
Who'd you tell this to?
the next month in December.
He was just saying it to whoever was listening. Hey.
Guys, hey guys. Like,
telling Mr. Coughlin.
Jordan, play the song. No, Day of Black Sun. So the next month, they aired it in Canada in December, and then they didn't air it in the US until July, where every single day for a week, they played one new episode every day in July. They called it Countdown to the Comet, and I was just mad, and I hated the whole thing. It was so dumb. I feel like watching it, a first person watching it, like you can kind of have this like seamless transition. But for me, there's like everything before the Day of Black Sun and everything after. Because in the show, there's like maybe a day goes by between those two episodes. Mm-hmm. And then for me, in real time, I had to experience complete agony of the rest of my senior year waiting for this, thinking that like, oh man, I'm going to die and I'm not going to know what's going to happen. So I ended up having to watch this episode and the Firebending Masters and the Boiling Rock. I watched it on our gross like 2005 era computer with like some really funky internet connection. So I just didn't get like a very good experience with it. I was just so hungry for what happened next. So it was like a really guilty thing for me watching it. I was like, this is my only option. I'm going to pirate it.
Wow.
So that's my tirade. And just like Sokka says, after he introduces Zuko to his bedroom, this is really, really weird.
So did Nickelodeon ever explain why it took them so long?
There's probably something internal that they did. I've always had this theory that Nickelodeon got scared of the potential of Avatar: The Last Airbender of being this like high budget, high production value series that was serialized, that you had to have a series writing team being like, okay, this is our like season goal, this is our episode goal, this is how we're going to progress all these characters, versus a show like SpongeBob SquarePants where like every 11-minute episode is its own self-contained thing. It becomes a lot more work to put on something of the scope of Avatar. And I think, and again, this is just my own like paranoia, I just assumed that Nickelodeon was scared of having to do more of that, and whoever was in charge maybe didn't want that to be the direction Nickelodeon was going.
Gotcha.
So that's my theory on it.
That's a good theory.
And so they just held off on doing it, just kind of like got rid of it. And then Nickelodeon did a bunch of sketchy things with Korra too, of the sequel series, which I can get into later.
Is Avatar going to be doing like a multiverse like every other show is right now?
A shared universe, probably not a multiverse. But yeah, they currently have 2 novels based on Avatar Kyoshi, and they have a bunch of graphic novels on the adventures of after the show ends. So
makes sense.
Moving on to Firebending Masters.
The first official episode with Zuko as part of the group.
Yeah, and Zuko can't firebend very well.
What'd you think about him losing his firebending, Troy?
I legitimately felt sorry for him. And it made me wonder, like, well, what's been driving his firebending this whole time? And of course, they throw the answer at you right out of the gate. His firebending came from his rage. And then he realized this episode basically taught you that there's a good way and a bad way to practice firebending, and the way he's been taught, the way he's been raised, that is like the darkest way to firebend and the most twisted way. And so I really give a huge shout out that this whole series I've really underestimated the meaning of firebending, and this episode really educated me as to the potential of firebending and what it can be meant for.
Yeah, because they paint it as like the villainy of the whole series, and I don't think we could have gotten that reaction from you, Troy, had they had that experience with a culture or a group that was associated with the Fire Nation. They had to go with a culture that was so completely removed.
No, I really appreciated that for sure. It gave me a fresh look on the Fire Nation in a way that not a whole lot of shows are capable of doing.
So it's really interesting. Iroh, in Bitter Work, he teaches Zuko about what fuels each of the elements. And when he gets to firebending, he says rage and emotion fuels this, which after we find out that Iroh knows the true meaning of firebending, I don't know why he didn't tell Zuko that.
To protect the dragons.
But I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Because he didn't quite know where Zuko was going to land.
Yeah, maybe.
And
he
then
knew that Zuko wasn't ready for the truth.
Well, that's true. Another thing about this episode is that Zuko no longer like grunts when he is firebending after this.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay. I did not notice that until you said it.
So yeah, every single time Zuko firebends, it's like, and now after this, no longer grunts. So pay attention to that going forward.
So that voice actor is like, oh, finally, no more grunting.
Dante's like, oh, my throat feels so much better now.
Oh my God.
So what'd you think about this?
Wait, do you know who the voice actor is for
No.
Zuko?
Rufio. Rufy. Look at the.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
That's right. We kill lawyers around here. I'm a lawyer. Kill the lawyer. I'm not that kind of lawyer.
I want to watch Hook now.
Yes, it's a good shout out to Hook.
Dancing Dragon was my favorite.
Just everything around it, or what do you mean?
Just where it's like, okay, like, you know, Aang's like, oh, Zuko, like, will you dance with me? And he's like, what? You know, and then they do the little thing, do the dance. And then, okay, wait, but they do it one time and then have to perform it later for the dragons. I'm like, oh, great memory. I don't know.
You know, kids pick these things up pretty easily. And they're both, like, well-versed in martial arts. They're like, okay, these are our forms. I got this.
Yeah. But I was like, this would not be me. I'd be like, wait, what's the move?
Okay, with the dancing dragon thing, two things. One, it was based off Longying Mo Kun, which is the traditional southern dragon kung fu.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could pick that up immediately.
All right, Troy.
Okay.
And then thing two.
Not me.
I don't know if it was intentional, but, like, their ending pose definitely looks like the fusion move in Dragon Ball Z.
I was gonna say that. I was like, oh, I know that move.
Fusion. And then they fuse into one.
Remember, no more grunting.
Oh, sorry. Fusion. Ha.
There you go.
Ha, ha, ha. Okay, so the Sun Warriors. What do we think about them?
They totally remind me of the Mayan.
Aztec,
yes.
Well, it's interesting that they kind of like squish a bunch of cultures together because, yeah, they're like loosely based off the Aztecs. But then like the architecture is like Indian Buddha stupas and like Tibetan monasteries.
I think that was really cool that they decided to do that, like tweak it just a little bit. Yeah, no, and the way that the culture and the tribe just all formed, I thought that was all incredible. This episode finally shows the viewers, especially the viewers like me that have no experience with the show, where the end credits song originates from, the ancient firebending chant.
Are you happy with that?
I was blown away. They definitely hired a little orchestra.
Katie, what'd you think about that?
The song?
Mm-hmm. And how they incorporated it in the end.
I mean, I wasn't as into it.
Now I'm insulted with how mild the end credits are on every single episode. Now that I know how far they can take that song, I'm like, why are we not getting this version every time?
Why are we getting the radio edit?
Like, what the heck, guys?
Okay, so I do appreciate that you have that take on the end credit song. I hate it. Like, it bothers me so much that they have the end credit song.
What would you want for the end credit song?
Well, there was
an original.
An original. I mean, there was a moment where I was like, okay, this is fitting. Like, I'm happy with this. But it just, because it was like with moi animation and it was the exact same track that they do for the end credits. Like, if they had like re-recorded it with like kind of a different sound.
You know,
maybe some flutes.
You know what song really doesn't fit the show that's on, but it's still awesome? Samurai Jack. That soundtrack does not fit the show at all, but it's still a really good soundtrack. Like, you would expect that soundtrack from the Avatar on Samurai Jack, not the hip-hop remix it's got going on.
That's true.
So, Avatar, we could have done a little bit better with the end credits song, but I'll let it slide.
Okay, more with the end credits. I'm sorry. But then we go to, like, the Sun Warriors, like they look like they're chanting, they look like they're playing the drums, but nothing's in time. Just the whole thing.
I think one night they were all just kind of, like, having a little too much to drink on music night, and they just decided to make up that song.
Prince Zuko, it's music night.
Aww.
That is nice.
I definitely think it could have been better, but whatever.
But it's nice thematically, like you have this song that's in the end credits and you're able to tie it into something that's culturally important to the series. And for that, I appreciate it. So it's no longer just this like kind of random song.
Right,
Yeah.
like going back to like, it's almost, you know, right, we're meeting these firebenders that are more like indigenous people that are removed from the Fire Nation and their BS. And yeah, you have these two little punks that are like Aang and Zuko are definitely the odd couple.
Oh, yeah.
But it's very sweet, kind of romantic. They're sharing
Are
lots
you
of...
shipping Zhang?
Oh, Zang.
Zang.
Yeah,
Yin
I
and
think I
yang.
am. Isn't that nice?
Is
Troy?
anybody else surprised that the dragons were blue and red instead of black and white?
Why would they be black and white?
Yin and yang.
Oh.
That would have made it a little bit more I don't want to say philosophical, but that's not the right word.
Well, I think the dragons were more of like spiritual creatures, but they are of the material plane, and so I just think it was coincidence that they happen to be red and blue. And it also goes along with the visions that Zuko had of the red dragon and the blue dragon. So they kind of tied it together with that.
Okay, I understand now.
All right, with the Sun Warriors, I just kept getting the vibe because of how the monasteries were and the architecture. Do we think that the Sun Warriors were more like the air nomads in terms of like how they viewed the world? Like they were more like monks in a way.
Keep to themselves.
And then like the culture changed with the Fire Nation.
Yeah, I think they definitely had their own views, like the air nomads. So I'm getting strong vibes between the air nomads and the
Sun Warriors.
Sun Warriors, thank you. That all four of the elements have like their own ancestral population that's not even connected to it. Like Earth Kingdom, like they have their Earth, they have Ba Sing Se, but then they probably have like, I don't know, the Earth nomads living somewhere else.
That's fair. Like ancient indigenous people who learned from like the Badger Moles.
Water tribe, like where did their ancestors come from? They must have
sea.
Atlantis.
Oh, that took a turn.
The Atlantis nomads, you know what I mean? Living underneath the Fire Nation, probably know, deep in the sea.
Speaking of ancient things, I did appreciate when Toph was talking about like the original source of the bending powers, and we know that Toph is clearly the greatest earthbender in the world. It's interesting to learn that because she learned from the Badger Moles, like maybe that's the reason she's so good at earthbending. And I did appreciate that the distance between bending as a fighting style and a martial art versus bending as like the way you interact with the world. And I do think that was an important thing that Toph says, and more like what the actual meaning of bending is in this world.
And I guess that's what makes Azula and her dad and Zuko so boring when they are all villains. I'm just like, okay, you guys are just blowing stuff up, set people on fire, boring.
But just think how cool they are when they're heroes. Imagine what Azula and Ozai is going to be like when they turn.
I know.
Guys, take us to the Sun Warrior Temple. Let's go to Ember Island.
Let's take a few steps back to season 1 during that podcast. What Toph said really highlights what I was talking about, how Tai Chi, the peasants on the farms, were teaching themselves how to fight using yard tools. And Tai Chi is never been meant to be used as a fighting style. It was just a way for them to learn how to defend themselves, but they had to incorporate it into their farm work somehow. And so for her to say, earthbending was never about fighting, it was just about a way of getting around on the earth, I was like, that's beautiful right there. So wondering what was the original use for the firebending? Life, to heat up the food, to keep warm during the cold days. It was just a very, very, the most elegant, most beautiful episode they've done to date.
And they talk about the flame having a little heartbeat and that fire is life. And
yeah, no, that was really creative stuff by the writing team for sure.
I mean, we do get that Aang finally sees what firebending should be. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting that they kind of do a callback to the deserter episode. And it's really interesting that both these episodes had like a Zhang deserter episode like reference. So in this one, because I've watched the show 7,000 times and I can just rewatch it in my brain right now. Hold on. Aw, that's so nice. So when Aang first learns firebending from Zhang, he's like holding the leaf and then he gets the fire and he's like, being a punk kid. And then he does that thing where he kind of like shoots out the fireball. And you get that thing in the deserter episode where Aang's like smiling as like the flame kind of dissipates around him before it hits Katara. And the exact same thing happens in this episode after Aang shoots his first fireball. You get that exact same moment of like the flame dissipating around Aang and he's got this big smile on his face. And I thought that was a really important way to show how far he's come with like his interpretation of firebending.
Was I the only one that thought he was going to accidentally burn Zuko?
His other side of his face? Yeah. You're sick.
Oh, God.
Like, he's all like, he's just all firebending, all happy. I was like, hey, this looks familiar.
Ouch!
Oh, I'm sorry, Zuko.
Okay, what did we think about Aang and Zuko finally hanging out together as friends?
Well, it was a much different conversation than what he has with Katara and Sokka. Like, they're both driven, but in their own way. They have Zuko, who for the first time in his life is driven to find the Avatar, but not necessarily capture him, but now he wants to teach the Avatar. And it's just kind of interesting. With Zuko's past, it kind of put me on the edge of my seat, figuratively speaking.
Yeah, he was relaxed in the couch.
Yes.
He was whispering to himself.
I was like, not to myself, like any second, he just might firebend just out of pure temper. But
so do you think Zuko's still kind of like a little unstable? Do you think he's...
That's the way I'm viewing him. Like, he wants to redeem himself, but he's still unstable. He keeps saying how his rage is gone, but it's just too funny because he said that so many times in the past. That's why I gave up on him for the first 2.5 seasons.
But he just saw the rainbow fire.
There were colors in there I never even imagined.
That's how I feel every time I see a piece of artwork.
You're like, oh, there's colors. How'd they mix that?
So
it was like they had this like life-altering experience with those dragons.
Oh, yeah. They're kind of tripping out.
I was going to say, like, that must have been, like, the original, like, LSD acid experience.
Iroh's like, hey, Prince Zuko, go see the dragons. But I do think it's, like, this great bonding moment for Zuko and
Puff
Aang.
the Magic Dragon. Okay.
Wow,
Troy.
I just had to.
Got it.
Okay,
so we do think that Zuko and Aang are, like, bonding in this episode. And Zuko has traits of, I think, Katie's favorite archetype of character, which is grumpy good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that brings me to Zuko's favorite line that I have. They're both stuck after that, setting up that trap. And Aang goes, help! And Zuko says something I would have said too. Who are you yelling to?
Okay, do we talk about, like, Aang's obviously comfortable enough with Zuko to, like, while they're waiting for the dragons to show up, he's, like, crawling on his back, like, share your fire with me, man.
That was pretty intimate. I was like, whoa, Aang,
Yeah,
whoa.
they were getting pretty cozy.
We are in the middle of a pandemic, and you feel comfortable crawling over somebody else.
As, like, the Sun Warriors are just watching. What are they doing up there?
Right, well.
My
so
fire's
that's
out. Give me some of your fire. No, take one of their fires.
And that's why I'm shipping Aang and Zuko.
Zang.
Okay, so were you surprised that the Masters were dragons?
No.
Because you seemed like at some point when the cave started to rumble, you were like, yeah, I knew it.
Yeah. It was like literally at the second right before they did the rumbling. I was like, of course it'd be the dragons. Of course they have a couple still alive.
See, I think I was surprised until the dragons showed up. Like, I wasn't anticipating it.
Right, because they just said all the dragons were gone.
Yeah, they say it several times to make
Right.
you, like, really believe.
But then as they were coming up the steps, I'm like, okay, who is this Ran and Shao? I'm like, who are they? I'm like, these two guys that are just like look the boys up and down, like, I don't know if they're worthy or not. I don't know. Like, how can you tell? How could two firebending Sun Warrior guys tell from two boys holding flames that they are worthy or not? And then as soon as it did the rumblings, I was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be two dragons.
Wouldn't it be great if, like, Iroh had showed up instead? Like, hey, what's up?
That would have made it all the more better. Watch this, Zuko. Boosh.
I'm the original Firebending Master. I've been here since the beginning. You find out Iroh's just immortal. He's a spirit.
So did those dragons, have they just been hanging out in that cave all this time in the Sun Warriors?
How old are they?
Yeah, like, did they just build their village, their tombs around the dragons, or did they train the dragons? Like,
How to Train Your Dragon.
that's what I was thinking of, How to Train Your Dragon, Avatar version. Like, I mean, like, what is the relationship between the villagers and the dragons?
Well, because they're the original masters of firebending. The Sun Warriors, they're the original practitioners. I imagine that they just revere dragons in general, and so maybe these dragons are especially old, maybe?
Those dragons would be so disappointed in the dragons from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that the dragons are just respected and that they kind of worship the OG firebenders. And I mean, obviously they thought, well, it seemed like they thought that the dragons were going to eat them and like that was going to be the sacrifice.
So
maybe they have to sacrifice themselves. To
the dragons to the Sun Warriors, what would that be the equivalent of, let's say, an animal to Americans?
The bald eagle.
I was just thinking that, but I was just like...
The turkey. If you're listening to Benjamin Franklin, he was like, this is our mascot, this thing. Yeah, true story.
Turkey.
True story, man.
Katie got hungry for turkey yesterday. Okay, real quick, let's talk about the original benders. So we got the dragons, we got the sky bison, we got the badger moles, and we have the moon. So we have three animals or like living creatures, and then we have a
Say the moon?
celestial object.
For waterbending.
The moon?
So the moon is the original waterbender.
But that's not an animal.
I know. So I don't know. It seems like a bit of a lapse in my mind. Like, and I see what they're going from because you get a lot of good moments in book 1 of like, oh, the moon was the original. And you get the sense that the sun is that for the firebenders with what Zuko says in book 1.
So it doesn't have to be an animal. It's just, it was an element. Yeah, the moon. Yeah, I could see that.
But right, but why isn't it the sun instead of a dragon?
Yeah, no. 3 animals and a moon. No, 2 animals.
3 animals and a moon. 3 men and a little lady.
Well, wait. Maybe there's another animal. There was like, okay, we had the moon, and then we had
Well, maybe.
the
Or
polar bears.
Or it was like an animal that is long
polar
since
bears,
been
yeah.
extinct and they don't remember what it was anymore. I mean, I could see that.
Okay,
I mean,
first animal you think of when you think of water.
fish. It was a
Okay.
fish.
Well,
A fish that shoots water. Well, you do get the unagi. The unagi and like the serpent in the Serpent's Pass. The unagi definitely like spews water. So I mean that could be it.
Good
but
point.
Obviously it's not.
the whale.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that you get 3 animals in the moon. But also, every single one of those, minus the badger moles, has been sought after to be destroyed. Like all the sky bison minus Appa are destroyed. All the dragons minus the original the masters are destroyed.
So we got bisons, we got
Zhao destroyed the moon.
right.
And so everything's been everyone's tried to go after it except the badger moles. They're the only safe ones. Badger moles.
Just like Ba Sing Se.
bisons. I'm
They
sorry,
were
bisons, dragons, badger. Okay, so
Troy
it
is
was.
still
It is
wrapping
3.
his mind around that.
Not badger moles. Nobody wants the badger moles.
But no, the moon's for the water. Badger moles are for the earth.
But maybe it's because you have to dig up the whole earth to find them.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember last time when
Tyler.
Cousin Tyler's going by on his motorbike. Okay, so what do you think about that? Like everything's been. Antagonists have tried to destroy every one of the original benders except for badger moles. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I just think that they're too good.
Well, I
It
mean,
was too
I'm
much
just
work.
talking about like the act of like trying to destroy the original benders.
Well, I think it's a power move, and in our way is the best way, and we got to dominate everyone else type of thing. It's a demented way of thinking, but that's a way of thinking.
Okay, going back to like just some trivia nuggets. This is Zuko's second time on Appa
I
ever.
don't like that trivia nuggets.
Yeah,
Like,
little nuggets. Like you dig your brain and you find your nuggets.
is it making you hungry? Or just me? Did I eat breakfast?
Okay, so this is Zuko's second time on Appa. The first time he was unconscious because it was during the Siege of the North Part 2 when Zuko's like,
Oh, yeah, I feel like we never really talked about Zuko being like, and I saved Appa.
no
you
one
guys."
reacted to that. No one was like, oh my gosh, thank you. That was so good of you to do.
Like, I feel like Zuko and Aang could have shared a moment. He was like, hey, so thanks for...
Hey, you're welcome.
Okay, moving on.
Other trivia nugget, we get a Raiders of the Lost Ark moment where Aang's like, I don't trust like shiny things on pedestals. So those
What
are my
was
two
that
nuggets.
stuff that stuck them?
That stuff that stuck them.
What'd you just say?
The trap.
What was that stuff?
What was that goo
stuck
that
them?
glued like stuff? I can only imagine.
Tar.
That. Must have been.
Whatever it was delicious to those anteaters. We had that semi-erotic scene
And
of them licking
what
off.
Is it
point did
honey?
the Sun Warriors have the time to engineer that kind of a trap?
I don't know what they're protecting. I don't know what that thing is. It was just like some gem.
Yeah, that does not get referenced again for the rest of the episode.
No, it was just a MacGuffin thing to.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a
What a goof. Okay, rewinding to the very beginning of this episode, I didn't like Sokka's characterization. Like, he was just really, like, jokey.
Jerk bending.
Jerk bending was hilarious, but then it just kind of kept going. He's like, I just gotta make Zuko mad.
Yeah, because Sokka's
Sokka's
annoying.
annoying.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because it did. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but now that we're there, I love how at the beginning of the season, Aang was full of the corny jokes and Sokka and Katara were a little bit serious. Now Aang is finally serious, and now Sokka and Katara are having the corny jokes. I'm like,
Katara
no.
doesn't have the corny joke. She's trying to kill Zuko.
Grow up, Sokka. Grow up, dude. Like, come on.
Sokka grew up in Day of Black
Jerk,
Sun.
jerk bending, jerks, jerk bend. I'm like, dude.
I still got it.
He's got a sword now.
It's true. He does have a sword. He's a sword master.
Yes.
But we can also talk about the other greatest line, Sifu Hotman.
Sifu?
Call me that.
Your Zuko impression.
I don't know why. That totally felt like a Napoleon Dynamite moment right there. Sifu Hotman. Don't call me that.
Teeny fat lard.
Whatever. Jordan hasn't even seen Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes, I was sick once, and we had rented it for 3 days. And on one of my sick days, I watched it and did not laugh at all. Not funny. Terrible movie.
Personal problem.
Oh, man.
Dad had a Vote for Pedro shirt. Remember that?
Well, Dad hated that movie, too.
I know. And I was like, why do you have Vote for Pedro on all the time?
I think it was like the third time.
Like, he always wore it.
Was this mustache?
You were watching
Your
it for like the
mustache
third time, I think, and Dad walks in from the bar, and he's trying to change
guy?
his
It sounded like you said
clothes
the bar, but
from the barn.
Burn.
walking from the bar.
And he glances over. Every time he glances over at the TV, he's like cracking up at whatever they're saying in the movie. I was like, you're just now finding that funny? I was too into my computer games at the time to care what the movie was, because Katie had bought movie tickets, or Dad had bought movie tickets, and I'm sitting there in the theater thinking like, this is the dumbest movie ever. But I couldn't help myself. It was still funny.
Especially when Canned Heat came on.
So now, referring back to the show, Sokka
Yeah, let's bring it back.
and Aang and Zuko.
Man, you're really naming off all the boys.
What about Toph?
What about Katara?
No, just the boys, because in Napoleon Dynamite, they're totally acting like
Napoleon.
Napoleon, Kip, and Uncle Rico. Like, they're just acting just as dumb. It's like, oh, come on, you guys.
Wow.
Never in my life did I ever expect to have a conversation about Avatar that segued into Napoleon Dynamite, and I don't know what to think about this.
Well, no comment.
Is this a life bingo card moment I got to knock off? 2020 really is the worst year.
God, I feel like we gotta rewatch this.
Jordan's like, I've never
Okay.
felt so disrespected with Napoleon Dynamite on my podcast.
All right, you guys stop jerk bending.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Do we agree that both Zuko and Aang are kind of jointly at fault for the decline of the dragons?
Yeah.
Cool.
Troy? Yes or no? Spitfire.
Yes.
Dang.
Jordan?
I think it's unfair. It's not fair.
That's not. It's a yes or no question.
It's unfair.
That's a yes. Okay. Troy, what's gonna happen?
Well, is that the wait and find out?
No, boo. Come on.
Have an opinion.
Boo.
Katie, what's going to happen?
Yeah, what's
Let's
gonna
spoil
happen?
it all for Troy.
Yeah.
Zuko is a bad boy.
Zuko's going to grow a mustache. Troy's hungry. His stomach is grumbling.
Oh my God,
He also
so
had-
rude. How many episodes do we have left? I've never seen this.
5.
I'm not going to tell you how many episodes we have left, but
We have 5.
the next 2 episodes
You already
are...
looked it up?
No, we don't have 5 episodes. Don't listen to Troy.
Troy just winked at me. I
6.
don't like it.
We have...
Okay, it's fine. How many? What do we?
We have 9.
what do we
no,
have
8.
next?
We have 8 episodes left.
8?
8 episodes left.
I was going to get to 8.
The next 2 are called The Boiling Rock, Part 1, and The Boiling Rock, Part 2.
It's going to be a part 3?
Can't tell you.
No.
What do you...
Go.
You go.
I don't have anything to say.
I have nowhere to go. All right, kids. Until next time, practice your jerk bending and make sure to keep all of your jerk bending forms as jerky as possible.
Also, PSA, don't be a jerk. We got enough of those rolling around.
Thank you, Sifu Hotman. Hot woman. Yep, yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep.
So I remember in a previous podcast, you had expressed that you would have been really upset if Zuko was going to be Aang's firebending teacher.
Oh yeah, and I
What's
am
your-
upset.
What's your feeling?
Yeah, where are we at right now?
Yeah, so when he burns Toph's feet because proving to me that he's not going to be a good teacher, that he just like can't control himself, and then Aang's like, I also couldn't control myself. You'll be a great teacher. I was like, no, Aang, this is why he's not a good teacher. What are you talking about?
You
No
understand?
flying pig. Toph's
Nope.
perfect person for me. Like, Toph was like, oh, look how good she is. She did exactly what, it's not Binky. What's his name?
Oh, Boomy.
Booey.
Binky.
Binky?
King Binky of Omashu.
Yeah.
Well,
He's
King
like, you did
Binky.
exactly what Booby said, so that made sense. And then this like Zuko thing was like, I feel like you're justifying it for yourself, but you don't have any other options. I mean, Toph's right. Like, he's your best option.
Yeah, I do. I think Toph was definitely MVP in that episode again for like convincing everyone, because they're like we talked with Troy about, they're so clouded in their judgment about Zuko because of everything that has happened, and most of what he did against them was in book 1 versus Toph, who joined in book 2, who really has no relationship with Zuko or like what he did to them, no first-hand experience with that.
I thought it was funny that Appa was like, hey, my friend.
Hey, remember that time you saved me? Blah.
But I feel like they were like, I feel like they didn't even really address it. They were just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Zuko actually saved Appa.
But Zuko is so chill about Appa licking him. Like, he just sits there as he's just doused by Appa's gigantic tongue.
Well, I think he's just trying to, like, not do anything. He's like, I'm trying to look as meek as possible. Like, you could trust me. And, like, of course they're not going to trust you. There's nothing you can do by just showing up and being like, hey, remember those times where it seemed like I was almost on your side, but this time, actually on your side. Although Toph can tell he's not lying. I mean, he's a terrible liar.
What about Combustion Man?
Oh, the
Popping up.
assassin.
And then Zuko's like, oh, sorry, I sent this guy.
Which, did he die at the end of that episode, Combustion Man?
It's assumed that he died because his arm, like, flies off of the canyon after Sokka smacks him in the face with the boomerang. So, I mean...
So is this the last we see of Combustion Man and, like, his, like, origin story? Like, okay, he's an assassin for the Fire Nation. Does not explain how he has this, like, eye thing in his forehead.
And his mechanical robot hand. Penchant for not speaking.
And, like, why didn't Fire Lord Ozai hire him to, like, defeat the Avatar as soon as they knew the Avatar was, like, out in the world?
Maybe only Zuko knows about this guy.
Like, obviously you never thought Zuko was really gonna do it.
Right.
So why wouldn't you hire someone like that?
I mean, that's true. You'd think Ozai would go all out to, like, take him down.
He had a lot of faith in his little army.
Yeah, so ultimately I feel like we deserve more backstory other than, like, Zuko hired this guy. Which, it's not a good look for Zuko.
In this episode, I do feel like Zuko's personality, like, changes. Because we know that Zuko has this ability to be kind of, like, just super awkward at all times. But it's like, he's doing impressions of Iroh and Azula. He's like, why am I so bad at being good? It's just like, it's been a really interesting evolution for Zuko to see in this episode.
I liked his impressions of Iroh and Azula.
I mean, they're fantastic. He's like talking to the frog. Something about the Western Air Temple, and I think I probably mentioned it to you before, is that after the Day of Black Sun, when this was originally airing, Nickelodeon went on an 8-month hiatus, and there was like no word on when the show was going to come back. And so it was like complete radio silence for 8 months. So it aired. No-
All you see is Zuko riding off into the sunset, chasing them.
Yeah. Can you imagine me not having that resolution for 8 months? So Nickelodeon didn't...
That's almost one baby.
Well, and like, how was he able to track them? That hot air balloon was going way slower than Appa.
Maybe he just like, he's like, they're getting smaller in the distance. He's like, I think they're going to be going here. I don't know. I mean, but we know Zuko's really good at, like, he's not good at much, but he's really good at tracking down Aang.
That's true. And they've established that he's already been to the Western Ear Temple once before, so.
Which probably helped have that make sense. So what did you think? What do you think about what's going to happen now for the second half of book 3?
Well, I mean, Iroh, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Uncle Iroh now that he's escaped, because he doesn't know they're at the Western Inner Temple. And so, like, now I'm getting sad that, like, is he going to hook up with them again? Team Avatar? Is he going to do, like, some, like, Dolly-esque shenanigans in the background of the Fire Nation? And is he going to, like, sabotage things like Zuko should have?
Is it going to
Also,
open up
Zuko
another tea shop?
Should have recruited, like, May to be on his side. I mean, I wonder if she would.
There's a lot of things Zuko.
I don't know. That would have been an interesting conversation to see if she would have betrayed Azula.
Like, hey, I'm...
Where do you stand with loyalty here, babe?
Yeah, it's like,
If you had
do
to
think
pick
what Azula's
one.
doing is good? Like, I mean, she's already, like, established as kind of, like...
She doesn't really care.
Yeah.
It's not
she
her
doesn't have
problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty neutral.
But I feel like, circus girl. I feel like she could be convinced.
Oh, yeah. Tylee, this is going to be way more fun, and you get to hang out with Sokka.
Yeah, she'd be like, okay, I'll come. I mean, come on, Zuko. Recruit some other Fire Nation people.
I know,
Create a Fire Nation underground. I mean, there's been no hint that there's like a Fire Nation underground.
Not that we've seen. It sounds like they have a pretty iron fist in the Fire Nation. Because I think Zhang Zhang would have been one to have like an underground. But he kind of did, but it was in the Earth Nation, or Earth Kingdom. So maybe it has to be off the Fire Nation.
Off the Fire Nation. In the colonies, as they say.
Yeah. That's a colony thing.
It's a colony thing. But yeah, I guess, I mean, obviously they have to go back and eventually face Fire Lord Ozai. And they no longer have a convenient date of an eclipse. So I guess I predict that Aang is going to learn firebending.
Ugh.
And he'll maybe go back to that yoga teacher to like unlock his 7th chakra so he can go to the Avatar state, and then he'll go fight the Fire Nation. But yeah, I mean, I guess their sense of urgency. Well, when does the comet come? Right, that's the other thing. That's the time frame.
By summer's end.
And then, what season are we in now?
So we're in book 3. We're in the final season.
No. I meant, like, is it summertime when
the
eclipse happened?
Yeah, it's been summer, so.
Okay.
And theoretically summer for a couple months, so.
Okay, so they got to get on it. So, I mean, Aang should be able to pick up firebending. Well, again, I don't think Zuko's going to be a good teacher, so it's probably going to take at least a couple episodes.
The rest of the season is just Aang trying to figure it out.
Yeah. But it's not the opposite of air, so it shouldn't be as hard as earthbending, presumably.
I mean, because Aang picked up waterbending pretty quickly. Better than Katara in the early episodes.
So yeah, I mean, I still have hope that they'll need some cabbages and a cabbage bender will show up.
The cabbage bender is secretly the greatest firebender in the world. Okay, real quick. So yeah, the clock is ticking on the rest of the season to take down the Fire Lord before the comet arrives. Do you think they're going to be able to do that?
Before the comet arrives?
Mm-hmm.
It'd probably be like as the comet is like about to like streak across.
And they're like, get him!
Yeah.
Katie, anything to say about the Western Air Temple or Day of Black Sun?
Nope.
You've said it all.
I've said it all.
Perfect.
Yeah, excited to rewatch the rest. Because, yeah, Jordan's been wanting to watch these episodes, and I want to have an organic reaction because it's like my first time again. And so I don't really remember what's coming up.
Because I'll say it again. So there was an 8-month hiatus after the Day of Black Sun, and then Nickelodeon, what they did, and it doesn't sound like that big of a deal in 2020, but in 2008, they dumped the back half of book 3 over the course of 1 week. Like every day of the week was a new episode leading up to the series finale. The 4-part series finale. And I was so angry about that.
It's not much
so
like process
8 months
time.
of the same season. So it was like a different year by the time it ended the same.
Yeah, so they did like a new.
I mean, that is weird. Because didn't they make a big deal about the Black Sun the eclipse episode on Nickelodeon?
Yeah.
So then they were like, now we're going to do an eclipse of information about Avatar.
Yeah, and then like it was before the internet was like as prevalent as it is today. Like I had to like go on message boards. I was like commiserating with other people online. Like Nickelodeon was like not talking about it at all. And I was like, oh great, they're going to cancel it and I'm never going to know what happens. Bold.
Which is crazy, you know, that I think they probably just didn't anticipate. I'm sure back then they weren't anticipating that there would be such a huge fan base.
But it wasn't that big until book 3. And book 3 is when it got really big.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And look at it now. Trending on Netflix. And
wow.
There's podcasts and all sorts of good stuff going on.
All right, Jessica. Who's your favorite character right now?
Azula.
Who's your second favorite?
It's all Azula. Top 3 is Azula.
Azula.
Don't say that in a mirror. She'll show up.
Yeah. I mean, would I want to meet Azula in real life? No, she's terrifying.
I met Azula in real life.
Yeah, Jordan met her. the voice actress.
Oh yeah.
I met Grey Delisle, who's the voice actress of Azula, at Seattle Comic-Con in 2012, and it was very satisfying. She signed my book too. I was like, hey, can you sign this? And she did. And then on Twitter, a couple years later, she had like some tweet about how it's really sad when people like have them and celebrities as like their profile picture. And I definitely had me and her as my profile picture for a hot second. And I was like, oh, she's talking about me.
Very Azula of
I
her.
forgot about that.
Thanks, Azula. Which is a weird thing. It's not like...
Hey, don't make it weird. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was cool. I met Azula.
She's like, I don't know you.
I made her laugh.
Not enough to be in a profile pic.
I also met Christopher Lloyd and made him very uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Second favorite character.
Yeah, let's move on, Jessica.
I guess. I mean, are we talking about for the series overall or just like currently with what's happening in the story?
I think where you're at right now, like just your organic, like, oh, this is
Yeah.
my second favorite character.
I think my second favorite character is Toph because one, obviously, Team Avatar, I don't even know where they would be without her.
Exactly.
And I like that she's straightforward, cuts to the crap. She's just like a realist. Like, this is what we have to do, guys. I'm sorry. We got to do it this way. So I appreciate that. And then third character, Appa. I mean, he's MVP.
Time to get a flying bison.
Fire dancing. No, dragon dance. Dragon. Wait. And we'll all do the form. Ready? And bend. Troy.
No.
And bend it.
And bend it.
And
And,
bend
jerk
it.
it. And bend it.
No.
And walk
Do
it,
not say and jerk
work
it. Just... Okay, just cut it off.